Welcome to our first Q&A. It's going to be on horses today, and our special topic today is on shivers. This is something we get lots of questions about. It's very topical. Kath, the main question people ask about shivers is, what's the difference between shivers and string halt? And how do you identify the difference? What causes it, etc.?
Okay, so shivers, as I said, is a suite of symptoms, and the cause is unknown, and it could be a number of different causes. It could be trauma, it could be toxins, it could even be something like fibrotic myopathy. It could even be an autoimmune condition that causes shivers, and it can actually be a long-standing condition. The difference with string halt is that it's usually a short condition, so it doesn't actually go on for years and years and years unless it's untreated. It's caused definitely by a toxin, and particularly in Australia with Australian shivers, it's caused by a weed called Catsia or flatweed, and there is an alkaloid that's been identified recently that actually does have a degree of toxin. It's a neurotoxic effect, and this causes the string halt. But the big difference in terms of the symptom picture is that with shivers, it's a holding out of the leg and it's a vibration of the leg, which can often also include the tail. And there is a hesitation to move forward, which is probably what you're thinking about with string halt. There is definitely a hesitation to take a step forward and definitely a step back with string halt as well. But with string halt, the forward action of the leg will rise up very quickly and slap up against the horse's belly. So it's like that. Whereas in shivers, the indication of the foot is like slapping it on the ground. So you've got two slightly different actions, which need to be really clinically diagnosed by someone who's really skillful at doing that.
So in your opinion, in Australia, I know we've got an international audience, but in Australia, we know what causes string halt in Australia.
We do.
And you just mentioned those two words. They also call it false dandelion. People get very confused with
genuine
dandelion and false dandelion.
That's right.
But it's caused by the false dandelion.
That's right.
And so in your opinion, what do you think is more common in Australia, shivers or string halt?
In certain areas, string halt's going to be your predominant diagnosis, particularly in this weather. So you'll find with warm, wet weather where there is a proliferation of weeds like the false dandelion that have these neurotoxins in them. They come particularly after a drought situation, and in that environment, we'll get a lot more understanding and people reporting string halt in that situation. But the trick about it is this: shivers can have very mild symptoms. So you may not realise that your horse has these conditions until it manifests much later on in life. Most diagnosis of shivers occurs after the age of 10 years old.
But the other question a lot of people ask is, what actually causes shivers?
It's still really not clear what causes shivers, although it is quite clear what causes string halt. They do know there's definitely neurotoxins involved. So it sort of comes down to this idea that it is definitely a neuromuscular condition. They know that. That they think it may be genetic. So if there is a genetic proclivity, that can be a contributing factor. But of course, there are a whole bunch of other things that may stimulate that genetic coding to be engaged. So that could involve toxins, it could involve nutrition, it could involve trauma. And in fact, trauma isn't a bad idea to consider. Something, for example, that I remember even with a recent case was, for example, dogs, if they fall from a height, or that they can get an impact injury, they are often diagnosed with a degree of wobblers. And we all know that wobblers is a slightly different neurological condition in horses as well. But these things can happen through traumatic processes. Another thing that might be causing it is a condition called fibrotic myopathy. And the other idea is autoimmune conditions. So when I'm looking at any of my treatment protocols, these are the things I'm considering.